Alrighty, welcome everybody. I'm going to get started since we're at 12:30. I want to be sure to respect everybody's time. So welcome everybody. Really happy to have you join us today for our Lunch and Learn. I'm going to give a little introduction of our guests today and the program itself. So I am Olivia Hoff, the Programs Manager at the Milwaukee County Historical Society. I will be your host today, and we are very lucky to have with us Eloisa Gómez. And I want to talk a little bit about the program itself and what we have to offer here. So we're really excited to have you all join us. Like I said, for those of you who don't know us, we are a nonprofit historical membership society. The mission of the MCHS is to recognize and preserve our local history. In promoting a greater appreciation of Milwaukee County's heritage, the Historical Society hopes to develop a better understanding of our community and the issues and challenges facing Milwaukee County today. So through this Lunch and Learn series, we hope to bring the MCHS to your home by diving into a variety of topics centered on Milwaukee history and culture. And today's program, Latina Activism in Milwaukee, with author Eloisa Gómez and the League of Women Voters of Milwaukee County. And like I said, my name is Olivia, and I will be hosting this program with you guys. And a few notes before we get started using Zoom, just so everyone is comfortable. We want to make sure to keep ourselves muted, and you can do that by muting yourself with the microphone button in the bottom corner of your screen. And we want to be sure to, if you have a question, feel free to ask it in the chat, and I will facilitate at the end of the program. And then, here, perfect. And if you have a question about tech check or anything as well, if you have any errors going on, feel free to message me in the chat as well. I can help you through that. And be sure when writing in the chat to select everyone as a recipient, just so we can all see the questions being asked. And like I said, I'll facilitate that at our question and answer portion of today's program. Also, today's program is being recorded for folks who are not able to attend our live program and watch the recording at a later date. So if you do not want your likeness to be recorded, please turn off your camera. And for best viewing, please click the view button in the upper right-hand corner of your screen and select speaker view. And with that, let me introduce today's speaker. Eloisa Gómez is a public speaker on the topics of Latina activism in Wisconsin and Latino voting rights in Wisconsin. She is the co-author of Somos Latinas, Voices of Wisconsin Latina Activists from the Wisconsin Historical Society Press, and the co-creator of Democracy's Urgent Call, a poetry anthology by the League of Women Voter members across the United States, which just released on March 3rd, 2026. Eloisa received her Bachelor's of Arts in History from Mount Mary University and a Master's in Urban Studies from University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. She retired from her final position as the Milwaukee County Director of UW Cooperative Extension, and that is a position she held for 11 years. Eloisa currently serves on the Wisconsin Humanities Board of Directors with the League of Women Voters of Milwaukee County. She helped found the Committees por el Voto Latino y Latina Voters Outreach Committee in 2017 and remains an active member. At the state level, she became a chair and then co-chair of the League's statewide Committee Alliances Committee for 5 years. She currently serves as its Spanish Language Access Committee called Ballots Without Barriers, Votos Sin Paredes. And in 2025, Eloisa received the Meg McLean Award by the League of Women Voters Wisconsin for leadership on the Community Alliances Committee and dedication to bilingual ballot access in Wisconsin. So with that, I will turn it over to Eloisa and I will share our screen for her presentation.
Thank you so much, Olivia. I'm just so pleased to be invited by the Milwaukee County Historical Society to present during Women's History Month on the topic of Latina activists in Milwaukee in the 1960s and the 1970s. I was invited to be on the program through the League of Women Voters of Milwaukee County. As you mentioned, I'm very active with the League. And so with that, I would just like to share with you a few words about the League of Women Voters. which is a membership-based organization, and we're always interested in new members. So our mission and our aim is to encourage informed and active participation in government. Our goal is to increase an understanding of public policy issues in the community and to influence public policy through education and citizen advocacy. So we're always on the go. We're in the community year round, and just want to emphasize that the League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization. What we're here to do is to be of service and provide impartial information to share with you as you make decisions about how to vote. Next slide, please. So today's topic is Latina activism in Milwaukee in the 1960s and 70s. As Olivia mentioned, I am part of the League of Women Voters Speakers Bureau, and I'm also the co-author of Somos Latinas, Voices of Wisconsin Latina Activists. It is a book that is at the Milwaukee Public Library and other libraries, so you're always encouraged to grab a book from the library to read this, and of course other books as it relates to women's history. Thank you. Next slide. I wanted to point out that it's not just our book, the Somos Latina book that I co-wrote with Dr. Tess Arenas, but there's also some good resources that are out there as books, and is pertinent to today's conversation. One of them is by Sergio Gonzalez, Mexicans in Wisconsin. Another book is Latinos in Milwaukee, which was written by Dr. Walter Salva and Dr. Joseph Rodriguez. Obreros Unidos by Jesus Salas, somebody who is remains very active in our local community and has led many efforts for civil rights, migrant rights, and way beyond that as well. And then Teresa Delgadillo, who wrote the book Latina Lives in Milwaukee, which some of you may be familiar with. It's an excellent book, really sharing with the public the many contributions of Latinas in Milwaukee. And I believe one of the women in our books is on today's program, so maybe she'll have something to share down the road with us. So thank you. Next slide. So Latinas have been active since day one. The pathways, I think one of the takeaways that I hope you come away with from today's presentation is Latinas have found their pathways, sometimes on their own, usually within community, as to how they were going to contribute towards community change. So the notion that we were not active as a result of the lack of recording of our contributions, you really should not be mistaken for a lack of activism. It is we took a variety of pathways. And so this opportunity to talk to you today is to share with you some of the pathways our Latinas were involved with in terms of community change. When Tess and I wrote the book Latinas, Somos Latinas, it was Tess's idea that we start with our older Latinas. She said, we're losing our Latinas who made history in our local communities way too fast. And as a result of that, we need to capture their stories. And so Tess really started the whole effort before the book to conduct oral history interviews of women, not just in Milwaukee, but throughout Wisconsin. And she searched far and wide to identify the women. So many of them come from Milwaukee, a number have come from southeastern Wisconsin, but they're from other parts of the state as well. And even as we were capturing some of these stories of older women, we realized there were so many we had already lost their stories. And it's so regrettable because I had the opportunity to meet a number of these women whose story I wish had been captured. And You have to allow me to feel that regret at this moment because I knew personally some of their excellent work. The woman on the left side, wearing the scarf that kind of reaches down her blouse, her name is Irma Guerra. Irma's story, I don't even know the full extent of her many, many contributions, not just in Milwaukee, but throughout the state. And we don't have that story. Another shout out to Aurora Weir, Maria Ortega, Amparo Jimenez, Irma Guerra, Marla Anderson, and so many more women whose stories that we unfortunately no longer have. Now, if there is someone who is able to capture these stories, that would be awesome, because there is some information here and there on these women, but in terms of their oral history interviews, not many are left. And I want to I'll just bring up one of the women who I did a shout out to, and that was Maria Ortega. Back in 1984, I did an interview with Maria because I had done an exhibit, a photo exhibit on Latinas in Wisconsin. And I went to some of the members in the Latino community and Latinas, and I said, who should I be photographing here in our Milwaukee community? And a number of the women said, Maria Ortega, Maria Ortega. Maria was one of the quietest women I've ever met, so unassuming and so big-hearted. And from my interview, I'm just going to share with you what I wrote down. She was born in 1921 in New Brownsville, Texas. She started working at the age of 10. She helped her mother pick cotton in Texas. We suffered very much then, she said. Many of us worked under terrible conditions as migrants. And there was more that she shared with us. And here's another portion of that interview. Although she was never involved in community issues in Texas, and now in her 50s, her political involvement began when the director of UMOS asked her to become involved in the community's growing concerns over civil rights violations and maltreatment of farm workers. When asked why she decided to help out, Maria stated, I volunteered because I did not want our people to continue to have less than others. I wanted to help raise the quality of life for my people. And she did this not in what you would call a traditional leadership role, but Maria, in '69, she marched on foot with a group of other Latinos and other communities of color. They marched to Madison to protest the inadequate welfare benefits for poor women and families. At every one of the stops along the way to Madison, from Milwaukee to Madison, she would prepare meals for the weary marchers. In '71, Maria marched to Washington, D.C., or went to Washington, D.C., to protest negative impacts on farm worker organizing. And the list kind of goes on, but the one thing I did hear, and what she shared with me as well, is that she showed up. She showed up at the rallies. She showed up at the community meetings. She showed up at the protests. And that presence, I think one of the leaders, I think Jesus had called her an Adelita. It's a term back from the days of Mexico in which the women were side by side with those fighting in the Mexican Revolution. So that term back from the 1900s, sort of continues today and used to talk about some of our women who were activists. And I love the fact that Jesus and others called her one of their Adelitas. Next page. So there were a variety of pathways in which our Latinas became activists. Like the story of Maria Ortega and others, the fight for migrant rights was very important. There were women who were huelguistas, which were the term, it essentially means a woman who is a striker. And back in the 1960s, Obreros Unidos was very active in trying to organize the canning and agriculture-related industries, as well as the farm workers themselves. You know, the conditions were very, very poor for migrant workers in Wisconsin and across the country. And the efforts were both to fight for dignity, for adequate housing, for decent wages, and for really a reduction of racism, not just within the industries, but also in the smaller rural communities that they were in. And so there were individuals who took on the role that were Eva Valenzuela, I believe is her name, who was fired from her job because she wore a pin that referenced the United Farm Workers, and others. The photo on the right side of Ramona Villarreal, she's the person on the left in that photo. Her and her brothers, as children, helped to sell the newspapers that were being distributed in central Wisconsin, again, to call attention to the violations of people's worker rights and to organize the community. So a variety of roles were offered to women, or taken by women, rather, as there was a fight for migrant rights. The next slide. In the continuation, that was Obreros Unidos was very organic, although affiliated with the farm worker organizing that was happening in different areas of the country. But when the United Farm Workers really took on the tremendous national boycotts, Wisconsin responded, and certainly Milwaukee responded. And this is an example of both men and women of all different races and ethnicities becoming involved, seeing that there was a tremendous injustice for the farm workers. And as a result of that, followed the call for boycotts against both grapes, lettuce, and I believe maybe brandy. And so there was organizing in Milwaukee and way beyond. And so Latinas found their role in working on this. And I'll do a shout out to my Aunt Lupe. Our church, like today, many of the churches now are responding to the call to support undocumented and refugees who are being confronted by ICE. Well, the churches back in the day were also very involved in supporting the boycott. And so our local church on the north side, St. Mike's, was asked to host the farm worker organizers in Milwaukee in the 70s. And so my aunt, she helped secure them a place that was offered by the church, connect them to the different community resources. And she took me along. She said, come on, let's get involved. And so I was able to join with others as we were picketing in front of the stores to encourage people to boycott grapes, lettuce, and other things. So this was a call, I think, that women who cared about both conditions and economic opportunities. Next slide. So some of you might or may not be familiar with some of the national organizing efforts that came to Milwaukee. So even outside of the realm of fighting for farm worker rights was the fight for civil rights and having our share of the political role in determining our communities, what should be occurring in our communities. Organizations like La Raza Unida Party, which had a very strong affiliation. Some of the active members in Milwaukee community grew up in what we call El Valle. One area in Texas in particular, in the Valley area of Texas, was Crystal City. And so the development of La Raza Unida Party spread to different parts of the United States. And Milwaukee was definitely an area that felt a strong affiliation to La Raza. But there was also other organizations called LULAC, the League of United Latin American Citizens. We had LULAC chapters back in the 70s here in Milwaukee as well. And then one that's perhaps lesser known is the American Legion. And I want to bring that up because I have a personal connection, another personal connection to share with you, which is we established in Milwaukee the David Valdez Post number 529. And it was named after a person who died in World War II, David Valdez. And so it was appropriately named after him. So we had, of course, the men's VFW post, but maybe lesser well known was the auxiliaries. And the auxiliaries were run by the women, and they had leadership roles to play. And they went through a leadership training program. I found my mother's leadership certificate just the other day and thought it'd be fun to post that as well. So we had a cadre of Latinas, Angie Ramos, and I'm blanking on some of the names that were part of it. Some of what you call los primeros, some of the first families, Latino families in Milwaukee were active with the David Valdez Post. And so again, for me, our family was not one of the primeros, but we had very close connections. My family had very close connections with some of the primeros. So they had a sense of obligation to both support the work of the Legion. But as you may know, they also provided scholarships to, I believe, high school students. They supported efforts to support veterans and their families, and they hosted a number of community events. I have a number of photos, which is a later time outside of the 70s, in which they did, they marched in the Mexican Fiesta parades. So I have those pictures. I didn't include that this time around, but I have some great photos of the women marching in the parade. So a lot of strong civic pride, and I felt like that was a spillover to other things that were happening in the community. Next slide. Coming back to La Raza Unida Party, so there was a women's component to the La Raza Unida Party. And with that, they were able to participate in both regional and national conferences just for women. And I thought that was pretty interesting. The person with her fist up, Maria Rodriguez, who continues to be very much an activist in our community, was a member of the La Raza Unida Party. She was able to attend some of the regional and national women's conferences, but the one in particular that she highlighted, and this is in the book Somos Latinas, she had talked about her ability to attend the 1975, the first UN conference on women, which was held in Mexico City. And she felt that that was a lifetime experience for her because she met women not just across the United States, but women from across the world. And she recalls how women could talk so bravely about the mistreatment of women and how that was identified in various countries and their fight to change that mistreatment. So it really has stayed with her. And for our Milwaukee woman to have attended that conference, that was quite amazing. And I feel we're so lucky in Milwaukee to have a local Latina who was at that historic conference, international conference. Next slide, please. So there was a lot of activism in Milwaukee for things that were happening in Milwaukee that were very serious. And the Latino community had known for a while that not only were they concerned about the low number of Latinos attending the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, but the retention of students at the university. So they really created a set of demands for not just, the access and retention of Latino students at UWM, but the support services that would need to happen on campus for them. And it included, more Latino faculty members and administrative staff. And so it was a big demand. Well, the chancellor and others were not interested or not perhaps taking those set of demands as seriously as they should have. And as a result, there was a takeover of the chancellor's office. And these photos are important for a couple of reasons. One is because it shows you that Latinas were in the thick of things as it relates to the demand for increased services, to the ability to gain educational access to their local university. The other thing is I want to highlight is that we really need the names of all those women who were there, and we don't have them to my knowledge. And it's been a couple of years since I searched to say all the people who were there. I think we need to know their names, but we do know some of them who were there. And one person I want to highlight, it's in the top photo to the left, in which the woman is crossing her arms. And that is Marla Anderson, who turned out to be one of the 5 people arrested by the police during the takeover. I understand it from Jesus's book that it wasn't planned that she would be arrested, but she was, and I think she did that with pride, and that's my interpretation. I do know a number of people who knew her, and I do believe that this is something she took very seriously. It wasn't by accident. I think that this was something, a way to show strength, in trying times. I don't know if others have known about being arrested, but when that happens firsthand, it is a scary time, but it is a time for us, sort of a call to action for some people to take that step forward. So a shout out to her. Next slide. The fight for bilingual education in Milwaukee public schools. One of the ways in which bilingual education became successfully implemented in Milwaukee public schools was due to the parent activists. And 3 that are noted for that, and there was many, many more, but 3 I'd like to do a shout out to would be Aurora Weir, who was in the color photo to the left. Aurora Weir, and this is one person again whose story I wish we could have captured it in person, and told from her point of view all of the struggles that on the northeast side of Milwaukee, what is now called River West, she was fighting for the Latino students to successfully do well within the primary and secondary levels and beyond, of course. Unfortunately, her life was cut short, and she was not able to continue that strong advocacy, but she has been identified as one of the parent activists and professional. She ran an agency, the Aurora Weir Educational Center, that might have started after that advocacy, but certainly in her heart, she was just believing that the growth of the Latino community would happen through successful educational attainment. To the right is a photo that I took. Well, actually, both of these photos I took of Aurora, and this one to the right is of Mercedes Rivas and Amparo Jimenez, two wonderful, wonderful women who showed up, stayed until midnight hours at the Milwaukee Public School Board hearings, showed up at the rallies, helped to organize more parents to become involved, to fight for bilingual education and the type of bilingual education that would happen in Milwaukee Public Schools. I asked Amparo and Mercedes, I said, I'd like to take a picture of you. This building in particular, it was also a place of personal historic meaning to me as well. The old Our Lady of Guadalupe Church. And I said, I'd like to take a picture of you in front of the building. So they stood there for a minute, and I'm getting my camera ready. And I said, okay, I'm just about ready to take the picture. And right away, Mercedes grabs Amparo and just gives her this beautiful hug, as you see here. I only wish the picture came out more clear, but it was just, I think it's that tenderness and that care for each other that I think people realized. And it is the trust building that I think helps to sustain some very challenging advocacy efforts. So I was just grateful that I have this picture of the two of them, of course, with Aurora as well. The organization that they were a part of is called the Citywide Bilingual Bicultural Advisory Committee. There is some information on that effort. I believe that Dr. Tony Baez has some of the records from that very challenging effort, which eventually was successful, and we continue to have bilingual education in MPS today. The next slide. Okay, so we've moved on, and I'll just stop here for a second to say, right from the get-go, it was always alliance building. It included white women and Latinas working together almost from the get-go, perhaps from the get-go. And there was there were women, shout out to them, who early on wanted to be part of creating change in the Latino community that reduced the mistreatment by the police, that increased educational opportunities, that increased employment opportunities. And so there was different times alliance building by white women and Latinas. And this would be an example of one of them. LaGuardia, which was a newspaper sponsored by the Latin American Union for Civil Rights, LAUCR, as it's called, was the sponsor of the newspaper called LaGuardia. And there was a coverage of several meetings that were held, and it was about this alliance between women who were involved in the struggle with Latinas to carve out more space for Latina defining. I think this was like one of the first further defining what greater roles that Latinas wanted, and white women who were very active, again, with the struggle. And I'm going to share with you a couple of their demands. And it started in 1970, and it kind of continued for part of 1971. Unfortunately, it seemed to be a short-lived effort, but it really is. I want to highlight the fact that there was, sort of written language about a demand for increased leadership roles of women. And so the demands were presented in Spanish, and they had talked about at least 1/3 of and this was at there were 60 women involved in this organizing effort. And it was part of it was meant to be part of a larger convening. They called it I believe it was a convention that was held in 1971. So the women said they wanted to present something at this convention. And so what they did is they created some demands that included, I won't read them all off, but that women constitute at least 1/3 of all boards of directors of agencies and organizations in the Latino community. That should be accomplished in 1 month. So, wow. That that the preservation of Latino culture in the family be the responsibility of both mother and father. And I'm trying to look at some of the other ones, but essentially what it is that they wanted to highlight that women could take on a more visible leadership role. And so that was part of their demands. The fact that it was short-lived should be a concern to all of us, because was it, how was that met? But regardless, some of these same women continued to be part of community efforts that were, again, challenging some of the injustices that were happening in the community. So their roles continued on regardless of whether or not these demands were met. So next slide. Okay, so then I'm skipping to 1978 to 79, in which Gloria Vasquez, who I've known for a number of years, and who I had a chance a little bit more recently, I'd say in the last maybe 5 years, where I had a chance to get a little bit more of a history of her involvement with ALMA, Acción Latinas de Mujeres Aliadas. And this organization was not around for a very long time, but it was still a very important effort. This was Latinas themselves forming a nonprofit that would really work at supporting scholarships and educational opportunities for younger Latinas. So it was very purposeful in what it wanted to do. And so there was a group that convened, and there were some women other Latinas from the South Side that were actively involved. And they received some money from a philanthropist, I think, to help with the scholarship money. So that should be noted. There was this separate effort, Latinas focusing in on the younger Latinas to create change in the community. I added a side note because I have to tell you, these things happen more often than not. So Gloria put on Facebook, and I captured some of it. She goes, "Oh my God, 38 years ago," and she posted this in 2017. 38 years ago in Milwaukee, after the banquet, and that was the ALMA banquet, I was arrested and thrown in a paddy wagon for standing up to police, playing the role of immigrant agents. By the way, it was in January and below zero. I have always been against mistreatment of Mexican sisters and brothers trying to make a living in the land once belonged to their ancestors. So we do things that are there to improve the community, and some people found themselves arrested either because of it or because they're just there in the community doing the right thing. So a big shout out to Gloria, who now lives in Texas. And later I'll have to tell her I noted both the organization she helped to found and her experience that one night on the south side of Milwaukee. Next slide. Okay, so this is, I'm not the best in terms of formatting, but I wanted to say that even with our limited documentation of our early Latina activists in Milwaukee, they still found multiple pathways to create change. Sometimes it was just the quieter nature. Other times it wasn't, but it wasn't documented. So this is the complexity of understanding what Latinas' roles were, not just in Milwaukee, but way beyond. There's so much research out there that shows that much more was done by women. It just wasn't captured. And as a result of that, I think there's a misunderstanding of looking back in history to see what happened. So the one takeaway I leave with you is that we have always found, as Latinas, we have always found pathways to create change. They may look different because of the conditions and nature of society at that time. There was just it was just an ongoing effort from day one. Next slide. Okay, sí se puede. We know that chant from our from the awesome historic woman of named Dolores Huerta, who gave us the Sí se puede slogan that was adopted by President Obama. But it's ours, but we can share it with whomever wants to rally around that change can happen. And this is a photo of League of Women Voter members who are part of Comité por el Voto Latino. We are a committee of the Voter Services Committee of the League of Women Voters of Milwaukee County. And we continue. So this is just one symbol of Latina activism that continues today. And as an older Latina, I am so excited about what Latinas in the future will be doing to help be change makers for our community. And so I will say, I look forward to seeing all the changes that they will continue from our long history of activism. And I want to say thank you to the Milwaukee County Historical Society for inviting me to be a part of this presentation. And on behalf of the League of Women Voters of Milwaukee County, we thank you.
Thank you so much, Eloisa. Such an incredible presentation and with so many wonderful photographs that really take us back to that time and capture that history, and that's not been documented in a lot of ways. That's not talked about enough. I really appreciate you giving your time and sharing that with us. I would like to encourage our audience to feel free to write in the chat your questions. I can facilitate those to Eloisa, and we can get a little conversation going with our question answer portion remaining of the program. Margarita says it was a wonderful program. Thank you,
Margarita.
Nicole asks, what activities and groups are active now in the community?
Oh gosh, there are so many wonderful things that are happening in the community, whether they're led by Latinos or they are part of a larger effort. I think of the Mexican Fiesta, for example, that has provided scholarships for quite a number of years, and who put on, of course, Mexican Fiesta. And Mexican Fiesta really had its origins with LAUCR, and that was to showcase, our ethnic pride. We are proud in who we are, of whatever Latino ethnicity we are part of. So if Mexican Fiesta would be one of them. Of course, the League, Hispanic Professionals of Greater Milwaukee. I would say that I feel bad that I'm not remembering all of them, but there's really, I don't think that there's a shortage of great organizations that are out there doing good work.
Absolutely. Voces de la Frontera came to mind for me. Of course, there's just so many wonderful ones that that collective goal of coming together is, I think, so fluid between the organizations. So it's really a powerhouse of gatherers. Anybody else have some questions? I have a question. So I'll ask my question. When you were talking about how the project with Somos Latinas, I have my copy here. As you can see, I enjoyed it. Make sure to get your copy, everybody. Libraries, local bookstores, all that good stuff. Um, Documenting these oral histories, and you said in the beginning too, how regretful you are that we are missing some powerful folks who have passed. And how has this initiative for documenting marginalized folks really taken hold in your own personal work, the League's work? How has that taken shape, and what is kind of the goal and the plan for preserving those stories moving forward?
Oh, that's a complex question, but I want to say that if we begin to explore what has been written, what we do have, um, uh, I think we get to sensitize ourselves to understanding who are change makers. What do they do? There's a misnomer. I'm not sure if I'm veering off or not, but there's a misnomer that community activists are those that are marching in the streets, that those are the ones that are getting arrested. And it's that, and it's so much more. It's so much more. And I think if we realize that there's this wonderful spectrum, we give what we can give. I think of Senora Ortega, she gave the way she could give. And I think if we understand that, we then can embrace, I think, who we are as a community, how we work together as a community. I was um, I was at the Wisconsin Historical Society, and I went through all of the Somos Latinas in the book. Their artifacts. Mine are there as well, but the other women had artifacts that I had not known. I've known some of these women for years, and I'm like, I think that awareness makes me understand that I'm embracing more of who can create this change for the future. I see what was done in the past, and I see how that can help us move together, because as we deal with things that are happening now, and I don't think I need to tell you some of the major things that are confronting not just the Latino community, not just undocumented refugees, but it's happening here. I think we can say we have a wealth of individuals who can create change. And let me just add, the starting point for us to create change, you're not born with your fist up, right? You confront challenges, and you can be pulled along. My aunt pulled me into working with, it didn't take much, but to get me working with the United Farm Workers, and she gave me a picket sign, and I was out there, in front of the stores.
Mhm.
And so you find ways to pull people in a gentle way, or you yank them in with you. That's your best buddy, But I think we say we're all in this together, and the more we're embracing that, because we've understood it a little bit more, the more things can happen. I think even at a quicker pace and a more sustained way.
Yeah, absolutely. It's collective action. It's coming together and doing, like you said, what you can, and utilizing that this is not just something for specific groups that it's happening to, it's for everybody. It's that wonderful poem about when they came for me, there was nobody left. Like that story of really coming together and using our different footing and do what we can, do something. It's better than nothing. And I want to share some comments in the chat here. Tamara said, this presentation was wonderfully done. And she said, as a Black American woman, it inspires me to become more involved and stronger ally for the Latina community, especially Latino women. And I think that speaks beautifully to what we're talking about here, is that collective action, supporting one another, regardless of our ethnic background or socioeconomic status and utilizing our spaces.
Thank you, Tamara.
And then Joanna said, no question, but I think we are remiss to not mention the historic leadership of Jocasta Zamarripa, who was a community organizer with SOC and went on to be the first Latina elected at the Wisconsin State Legislature. Absolutely. In 2010 and 2020 became the first Latina elected to Common Council, a modern day change maker in our midst and in our Common Council. So it's happening with that kind of moving forward and that collective action. Absolutely. Margarita told me to share about our oral history program that we have going on in the MCHS, so I will take her nudge. We have a really great oral history program going on right now in this particular project about immigrant stories in Milwaukee. We've been collecting since fall 2024, so it's definitely something that we're continuing to do. And if you have anybody who is first, second generation immigrant from anywhere, we're interested in documenting those stories for the very purpose, similarly to Somos Latinas, that we get those stories directly from the folks who have been there and experienced this. And Milwaukee is a gorgeous melting pot of different immigrant communities coming together throughout history. And we are really thrilled with the amount of Latino stories we've collected thus far, and excited to collect more and more folks of all of our communities. So thank you for that shout out, Margarita. Yasmin said, thank you, Eloisa. Beyond oral histories, how are you finding and recovering Latina stories? I'm writing my dissertation on some of these amazing women and want their stories justice despite archival issues. Amazing, Yasmin.
Thank you for doing that, Yasmin.
So yeah, are you finding other ways? Are there newspaper clippings that are kind of hidden in the archives? What other ways did you, in your research as well, did you find those treasure troves?
Yeah, I understand that LaGuardia newspaper is now digitized, but back, I think it was 4 years ago, I went with another person, and we were doing it was on the wheels. It was
the reel. Yep.
Yeah, it was. Oh my God, it was horrible. I wanted to really look at the stories to complement some of the work that that I was doing, and it was just impossible. I'm not used to doing that anymore. It was on film, and you'd have to, it was horrible. But now it's digitized, so there is more information. That would be one source, LaGuardia newspaper. If you're covering that particular period of time from like 68 to about maybe about 1980. LaGuardia ended around 1980 or so. The other thing is the Wisconsin Historical Society we have turned over, as a result of the work done by my colleague, Dr. Tesarenas, capturing quite a bit of archives, and they are at the Wisconsin Historical Society. So there's more there for researchers to be able to look at our stories that exist already. I think that would be important. The other thing I'd like to suggest is, just like my tia, Lupe, I never captured her story. So you go to your tia, you go to your mom, and you capture those stories, and you'll find out they were doing things you just never knew about. So I encourage us to look to our own family and dear friends and capture their stories. That is it'd really be worth it. And people will stop you and say, no, I don't really have anything to share, which is what a number of women told us. And it's like, no, yo sé que tú tienes una historia muy importante. So, you get beyond that and capture their stories.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's oral histories, the fact that we're able to give voices to those who weren't documented in traditional written history is such a powerful tool. And it's interesting too. So always be sure to work with the archivists that you're talking to as well, because there's so many documents that you would not expect. Like, for example, in our archives at the turn of the century, we had a lot of documentation about naturalization, and there's a lot of Latino and later Latina folks who were naturalized and became a part of this citizenship in this country. And it's a lot of different types of documents that can really unveil things. So working with an archivist, really getting dirty in the archives you'll be surprised what you find.
That's great.
Yeah, get in there. Stacy Carlos said, thank you, Eloisa, for this refreshing reminder of Latina activists who helped shape and pave the way for present activism. And Nicole asked, what are some words of advice you have for young Latinas today? I wrote my dissertation on the need for more Latina executives, which emphasizes the importance of pursuing higher education. So what are your words of advice to young Latinas today?
You know, I think some of the challenges that younger Latinas have today are different than those, you know, from before. So I can't say I really fully understand what to suggest. But my experience has been people want to help other Latinas, whether they know that particular profession or not. I think you will find women who do want to support mobility, professional mobility. And one of the things that Barbara Medina shared in her book, and that kind of relates to what Tamara had said, is the alliance building. You will find, and I have personally experienced, non-Latinos, white, Black, and other that want to see people get ahead. And so you could find your allies in people who you may not expect to, or you would say, hey, this is a person who I think is somebody who would be willing to help me. So it's I think exploring and believing that some of these people, even if it doesn't seem like it, are there willing to help you to succeed. That you will find them. I absolutely believe that.
Absolutely. Wonderful advice. If anybody has any final questions, we're coming around to 1:30, so feel free to write those last questions in the chat. I'd just like to say a little thank you myself. Thank you so much, Eloisa, for a phenomenal presentation. Truly, it's so wonderful to hear about this history that is so relevant today, but it's also not that long ago. So it's a really wonderful snapshot as to how we can keep moving, keep progressing in society, especially with those being underrepresented women in our history is a powerful thing. So thank you, Eloisa. And thank you to the League of Women Voters for connecting us and getting us all situated. I'm going to throw in the chat a link to their site. Feel free to explore and find out more about them. Wonderful nonpartisan organization that supports voting rights for everyone and uplifts those rights of those voters to make sure that everyone's getting the opportunity to participate in our civic duties. So please stay tuned for our upcoming programs as well. We have one more program in our virtual Lunch and Learn series coming up next April. We're going to be talking about the Milwaukee River's history and revitalization of those rivers. And if you'd like to see more programs like this one, please consider supporting the Milwaukee County Historical Society. We recognize that Milwaukee history spans across diverse communities, ethnicities, and cultures, so we hope to continue to bring us all together through our programs. I did also put a survey link in our chat, so if you have a couple minutes, please feel free to fill out that survey and give us some feedback. And with that, if we have any final questions, I don't think we do. With that, thank you very much, Eloisa. It's been a pleasure, and thank you everybody for joining us.
Thank you.
Have a great rest of your day.
You too. Bye-bye.